For a long time, Yoko could not make contact with her daughter because her ex-husband felt that John and Yoko would be a terrible influence around Kyoko, and basically grabbed her and traveled the world with her in an attempt to keep her from what he perceived as a very, very, very negative force.
For decades, Kyoko Chan Cox lived outside the public eye, shrouded in mystery as the long-lost daughter of Yoko Ono. Her disappearance in the 1970s gripped the media, but answers were scarce until now. After 20 years of silence, Kyoko has spoken about the emotional reunion with her mother, their painful past, and the healing that followed. A childhood torn apart. Kyoko Chan Cox was born in 1963 to Yoko Ono and Anthony Cox, an American avant-garde artist and filmmaker. Her early life was anything but ordinary. Her parents' relationship was already strained by the time Kyoko was a toddler. Following their divorce, custody battles quickly turned bitter. In 1971, Anthony Cox, who had become deeply involved in a Christian cult known as the Walk, fled with Kyoko in defiance of court orders. This act of abduction left Yoko devastated and set off a decades-long search for her daughter. The most haunting part of Kyoko's disappearance was the silence that followed. Ono had no idea where her daughter had gone. Cox moved from location to location, hiding in religious communities that helped keep their whereabouts secret. Yoko Ono publicly pleaded for information, even writing an open letter begging for any clues. But years passed without a trace. For Kyoko, those years were filled with uncertainty. She later revealed that she had been told false stories about her mother, making her believe Yoko had abandoned her. By the time Kyoko was a teenager, she had been cut off from all contact with her mother. It wasn't until she reached her 30s that she began to question the version of events she had grown up with. That doubt became the first step towards reconciliation.
Yoko's daughter is not allowed to visit us because her ex-husband won't let her see him, let her see her own daughter. All Yoko wishes is that now and again Kyoko could be brought to that house to spend some time with her mother and with my son Julian, because it's a beautiful home. We have 8 or 10 children living there that belong to the staff.
That's wonderful.
And we're not allowed to see our daughter. And Yoko's going mad, as any mother would, because her daughter has been withheld from her.
The long-awaited reunion. After more than 2 decades apart, Kyoko decided to reach out. At age 31, she quietly made contact with her mother. For Yoko Ono, it was the moment she'd been waiting for since the day Kyoko vanished. Their reunion was deeply personal and kept away from the spotlight. Both mother and daughter needed time to rebuild trust and process what had been lost. Kyoko has described their first meeting as emotional and overwhelming. Yoko wept as she hugged her daughter, holding her as if afraid to let go. The years they lost couldn't be reclaimed, but they could begin again with honesty. Kyoko was no longer a child in hiding. She was an adult who wanted answers, closure, and a chance at connection. Since then, the two have maintained a private relationship. Kyoko declined to make any public statements for years, choosing to preserve the fragile bond they had rebuilt. But now, for the first time, she has begun sharing her story, one shaped by love, confusion, and ultimately forgiveness. Why Kyoko stayed silent for so long. Kyoko's decision to remain silent for over 2 decades wasn't rooted in anger. It came from a need for space, protection, and healing. Her childhood had been defined by secrecy. Being taken from her mother at such a young age left her with emotional scars that took years to understand. When she finally re-entered Yoko Ono's life, the last thing she wanted was media attention or public pressure. Their bond had to be rebuilt quietly, away from headlines and expectations. In recent interviews, Kyoko revealed that she struggled for years to separate fact from fiction. Her father's version of events made it hard to trust anything outside that narrow world. Coming forward too soon would have meant answering questions she wasn't ready to face, not just from reporters, but from herself. The silence was her way of creating a boundary, allowing her to grow and decide who she wanted to be without outside influence. Yoko respected that. After their reunion, she never pushed her daughter into the spotlight. Instead, she focused on making up for lost time in whatever way she could. Their relationship grew in private, far from the cameras that had once captured her every painful headline. Only now, with time and reflection, has Kyoko felt ready to speak. and when she does, she speaks with calm honesty, not bitterness. Yoko Ono's heartbreaking Vigil. For Yoko, the decades without Kyoko were filled with grief, but also quiet determination. She never gave up hope. In interviews over the years, she spoke often of her daughter, sending out public messages and keeping a light on, literally and symbolically. In her New York apartment, she kept a small light glowing in the window every night. It was her way of telling Kyoko she was always welcome home. Yoko even included messages to Kyoko in her work. In 1980, during a Rolling Stone interview shortly after John Lennon's death, she said, quote, "I hope someday she'll see this and know I love her." That love never faded. Friends say Yoko marked every one of Kyoko's birthdays, even during the years she had no idea where her daughter was or if she was safe. The weight of those lost years took a toll. Yoko became guarded in interviews and increasingly private, rarely letting her emotions show. But behind the walls she built to protect herself, her daughter was never far from her thoughts. When the reunion finally happened, it wasn't just a joyful moment, it was the end of a long vigil. One filled with patience, sorrow, and a mother's quiet hope. Life in hiding, Kyoko's side of the story. For the first time, Kyoko has begun to describe what her life was like after her father took her. She grew up under a different name, shuffled between remote communities and religious enclaves that kept their locations secret. The cult-like environment discouraged contact with outsiders and taught Kyoko that the outside world was dangerous, including her own mother. This narrative shaped her early understanding of family and identity. She now admits that as a child, she had no real concept of Yoko Ono beyond what she was told. Her mother was painted as someone she needed to avoid. It wasn't until she was older that doubt began to creep in. She began researching, comparing stories, and slowly piecing together a different picture, one that didn't match the warnings she'd been raised on. That quiet research led her to the truth. By the time she reunited with Yoko, Kyoko had lived an entire life in secret. That experience taught her to be cautious and deliberate with her choices. Even after their reunion, she remained hesitant to speak publicly, not out of shame or fear, but from a desire to protect what she and her mother had found again. Rebuilding a mother-daughter bond. The years after their reunion had challenges. Though both wanted to move forward, the past was always there. Rebuilding a relationship after decades apart meant learning everything from the ground up, how to talk, how to trust, how to just be around each other. They were family by blood, but strangers in experience. They took things slowly, quiet dinners, private visits, small rituals that helped them grow closer over time. Kyoko has said that Yoko never pushed or pressured her. She let the relationship develop on its own terms. This patience helped make their bond stronger. Even today, their connection remains personal and mostly private. While Kyoko has now chosen to speak, she has done so with care. She hasn't shared every detail, nor does she intend to. What matters, she says, is that they found their way back to each other. They can't reclaim the past, but they can live in the present with honesty and peace. John Lennon's role in the story. During the years of Kyoko's disappearance, John Lennon was not just Yoko Ono's husband, he became a source of emotional support and strength during her lowest points. Though he wasn't Kyoko's biological father, Lennon felt the loss acutely. He even attempted to use his influence to help locate her, hiring private investigators and appealing to legal channels when possible. Lennon's own experience with childhood trauma and estranged parents may have deepened his empathy for Yoko's pain. He publicly backed her efforts to regain custody and privately stood by her as the years dragged on with no answers. Kyoko's room remained untouched in their home, a quiet reminder of the missing daughter they both longed to see again. When Lennon was killed in 1980, Kyoko was still in hiding, unaware of the full impact he had on her mother's life. Only later did she come to understand what he meant to Yoko and what she had lost in not knowing him. In her recent comments, Kyoko has expressed gratitude for Lennon's efforts and sorrow that she never had the chance to thank him. Now it's time to hear from you. Did you know about Yoko and Kyoko's journey? Let us know in the comments section below.